So if the crucible is the place where we go and we have a sense of being unthreatened, so we can just witness and now and accept and appreciate whatever we're finding value in it, then we can speak that truth and express that truth and perceive that truth, and now we can bring some truths into this crucible. With bringing the truth of our ego, since ego just means self, means I, because some people become afraid of owning their own self. And we all go through that developmental stage where we are egocentric. We see the world exclusively from ourselves. It's just one, the development of a child. And if we get a good solid sense and strength of ego, then we can transcend ego. But we can bring now our ego into our crucible and our ego investments. How ego gets in the way, to play with this phrase now, how ego gets in the way is that I get invested, I get identified with the things I believe in, the things I care about, the things I can do, the things I'm connected and people I'm connected to, and I have ego investments. It might be a belief. Most of us tend to get connected with some of our beliefs. So when we hear someone say something that doesn't fit our belief, our ego can get in the way, and we feel that as a need to correct them, straighten them out. And then it's hard just to listen and be present to them. And so our ego investments is our inability to let another person be another person and be responsible for themselves and take ownership of their own life, because we get invested with different things. An ego investment may be, I'm invested in making sure I have your approval. You know, think about how I get my greedy little hands into your life trying to make you like me because I can't stand it if you didn't approve. And so that could be an ego investment. So when we think about having a strong ego, the next page I've pulled out and just thrown in here, a pattern we use in neurosemantics for developing ego strength, just to provide some information here. To think about the strength just to face reality for whatever it is. And we call that ego strength. So the question there, number 2, what strength do you need so that you can face whatever without caving in and getting into defensiveness? So it may be flexibility or a sense of your own personal power, acceptance or appreciation. So what strength would enable you, what coping skills, what problem-solving skills would enable you to do that? Because as you strengthen that ego, here's that paradox. Once you have the sense, I can face reality, I can handle it, I'll figure it out. I don't have to know everything ahead of time. I can figure it out. We call that self-efficacy. It's different from self-confidence. Self-confidence is the past. I have skills, I have competency, I have proof, I have evidence, I can do those things. Whereas self-efficacy is about the future. I feel that I'm efficacious, effective, so that while I have no confidence to fly a plane, I have self-efficacy that I could go learn. I could figure that out. I could hire someone to teach me how to pilot a plane. So I could set a goal that I'm going to buy myself a helicopter and go learn to fly a plane. So I could have self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is my confidence in myself in using my intelligence, my emotions, my speech, my behavior to make things happen. And when you have a sense of self-efficacy, a sense of ego strength, then your ego doesn't have to get in the way because you have nothing to prove. Everything to express, nothing to prove. And that's one of the little lines I use as a frame for me. I have nothing to prove, everything to experience. Everything to express that is a uniqueness here. So the ego strength. You can see that number 4 there, and I threw this in because this is usually pretty important for some people, an optimistic explanatory style. And this, not me here now, this comes from Martin Seligman. How many are familiar with the work of Martin Seligman? Learned Helplessness and Learned Optimism. he analyzed clinical depression, and he came up with 3 Ps. So if you want to piss all over yourself, here's the solution. Something bad happens, something hurtful happens, something unpleasant happens, something undesirable happens, and you personalize it. It's about me. At your personal level, you make it permanent. It's forever. And you make it pervasive. It's everywhere. And through his research, I won't go into all the stuff about that. You can read some of the things on resilience that we've put together. But the 3 Ps, if you want to take the hurtful thing and bring it in, you make it's about me. So if it's a divorce, if it's a bankruptcy, if it's someone hurt you in some way, someone violated you, you didn't have a break that you particularly wanted, it's about me. It's because I'm not okay, or I'm inadequate, or I'm inferior. It's going to last forever. And it's about every aspect of me. It's about my health. It's about my relationships. It's about my work. It's about everything. And when you do that, you'll develop learned helplessness. Hopelessness. The opposite is to keep all that out, to have some good boundaries. And 3 magical words: this, here, now, or that, then, there. It's not me, it's that. It's not me, it's then, or that over there, or this. And it's not forever, it's now or then. And it's not about everything, it's just there. So this here now keeps it out. And that creates the learned optimism. So that'll develop ego strength. Because if you want to weaken the ego, your ability to cope, your ability to handle, your ability to master whatever is going on, something hurtful, bring it in, make it forever, make it about everything, and then you'll just develop a victim spirit and be victimized by the process. So this is part of developing ego strength, the ability to separate me and that. And even if that is something you did, that it was a behavior, not me. It was the way I talked. It was the way I didn't negotiate well. It was the way I didn't handle that. So it's not me, it's that. It's not forever, it's there, now, or then. And so we keep it out. We keep the pain or the evil out so we can stay and cope and deal. So you may want to bring into your crucible something that has been hurtful, that somehow you've personalized, and we're just going to boil that down so that we can then let it emerge as that, then there, and to keep that out. And that'll help us to get the ego out of the way. Because the other thing that will support that is the unconditioned value. Here's the diagram over here. When we really make the space that it's never about me. If I have a problem, it's always the frame. It's always the frame. And by making that distinction between person and behavior, person and thought, person and emotion, then we can maintain that sense of I'm still special, valuable, I have my dignity. So you may want to take into the crucible the ego. Something else that you may want to take is your drive. So on the next page, the page with the little pyramid, the 2 levels of needs, the needs at the lower level of the pyramid, all the deficiency needs, and then all the higher needs, the self-actualization needs. And you can see this little pyramid that we have on that page and the levels of needs and some of the higher self-actualizing needs. It's not that the lower needs are bad or even inferior. They're the foundation. So I don't want to discount them. Because simultaneously at every given moment we have survival needs. This very moment you need air and oxygen. And so we have survival needs. And at any given moment we can we can re-experience those survival needs. And so I want to own and acknowledge my physicality, the needs I share with animals for food, water, shelter, sex, those lower needs. At any given moment also, I have security needs. And we can become insecure at any given moment or a period of time. And so these are wonderful needs if I can validate them. Now, one of the things, if you have discounted them or brought some meaning that looks upon them as somehow lower or inhuman or unhuman, and don't embrace them and appreciate them and welcome them as your needs for safety and security, for sociality, for love and affection, and for a sense of self. That they're just basic needs that, and as we satisfy them and gratify them, then we move to the next level. But as Maslow said, we hardly ever satisfy them 100%, maybe 70%, or 75%, or 60%, enough to move to the next level so the next needs start emerging. The lower needs are more dominant. And if they get activated, we tend to move our consciousness, our awareness down to that need and become really, really aware of that. And the other needs don't have dominance at that point. And so you can experience that any time you experience the need for air, the need for water, for food, for safety, and we move to that level. And so even being able to evaluate at what level do I basically live my life? Well, most of us in this culture live way above the survival needs, but a lot of people live at the safety needs. They're not safe and secure. They may live in a part of a town where it's not safe, and so they always have that consciousness of how they could be in danger and living there. So living at that level, people living at the social needs of love and affection, looking for that, needing that, being needy, and not knowing how to cope with that. And if they've loaded it up with some meanings, they may be in a place where they need it really bad, but all their coping skills don't allow them to experience satisfaction, gratification of that need. So then they live at that need level, and they're needy. So the gratification moves us on. So I have met people who somehow felt it was bad to gratify needs. That self-gratification at any need level was somehow not spiritual, not high, not because of some frame, maybe family frame, cultural frame, and so we don't even talk about it. It's not speakable to speak about my sexual needs or longings or my sensuality needs or my need to feel safe, and somehow it becomes taboo or prohibited. And so that's how these needs sometimes can become dominant, and we get stuck at that level of need. There was an author.
Is there any criteria for moving from one to the next? I mean, I assume it's different with different people and different circumstances, or?
So is there any criteria moving from one to the other, and how do we think of this? It is a subjective experience when we feel like we have we've been gratified. So the experience of gratification, especially at this level, will be very, very similar for most of us when we have a full belly, when there's plenty of air to breathe. So most of this will be similar. It starts getting really different as we move up the levels and more idiosyncratic for each of us. But I don't know any criteria. It's a very subjective experience. I feel basically gratified. And probably the best criteria is that when I have this, other needs start emerging in my awareness. And I start having a feel, an impulse, a desire for this and then for this. Maslow called this post-gratification forgetting. Post-gratification forgetting. So that if these needs are pretty well satisfied, food and hunger and so forth, when you're needing them, you feel desperate. And then when you satisfy them, you can even forget how desperate you were. And so as we move up the levels, the post-gratification forgetting, because the need goes away, the drive goes away, and we're not driven there. And it may be even hard for us to remember what that felt like when I was really hungry or really lonely or really insecure.
Michael, I was just wondering, I was thinking of an example like Viktor Frankl when he was in the concentration camp. It seems like his need for safety wouldn't necessarily be met very well, but yet he seemed to actuate higher up. So did he reframe safety meant to him?
Okay. One of the diagrams that you'll see on our website, I don't think I have it in this thing, is that tried to think through this very question of, like Viktor Frankl and in the concentration camp. Typically, when we go up the levels the first time, survival and safety and through the process, the first time we go up innocently and naively. So if you see an infant, a 2-month infant, a year-old infant, in the first years of our life, we go up through the needs very innocently and naively. The need, the drive is the drive, means nothing else except my diaper's wet. I don't know the last time I ever said that. My diaper's wet and they change it. I need some food. Hopefully it wasn't recent. So as we go up the needs, they're really, really innocent. But if we have this face of the, and so maybe we go up hundreds and thousands of times, but eventually we go up it, and now we have some coping skills. These coping skills are actual skills and things that we can do to handle. So now I don't need someone else to feed me or change me or all this. I don't need someone else to hold me and help me to feel secure. I don't need someone else to be embracing me with kisses and loves. Now, coping, I have social skills to be able to activate a lot of these. I can feed myself, I can relate, I can connect, I can use my verbal skills. And so the face now comes up because I've given meanings to the need themselves, and I've got meanings and understandings and ideas about how to take care and gratify, satisfy these drives. So what if the face of the pyramid now is different from the naive experiencing? I experience them through the meanings and skills that I've developed. And if we call that the coping side of the pyramid, so that whatever year it is if it's 3 to 18, and I learn these basic coping skills, 3 to 38, whatever it is, that I'm moving up the thing now, coping with it, and now the needs, I don't experience the needs the same way I experience them when I experience them naively, because now they're filtered through my meanings. Now, we can get stuck so that as we go here, actually it's not coping. Maybe we divide that in half to where when we're not coping well. Because if I overload these needs with too much meaning or distorted meanings, if I map out something about the needs or how to cope with them in a way that doesn't gratify them. So we know lots of people, maybe we've been there, trying to satisfy some of our needs, but the way we tried to satisfy them didn't gratify them, and we even got stuck and looping in them. This is where if you load them up semantically with too much meaning, if I try now to use my survival needs to get my love and affection, so I'm eating to be loved, or to feel successful, or to de-stress, and I'm using food, which would have been really good if it was just food, but when it means sociality, or when it has some part of myself, I'm a somebody because I've got all this food, and as I eat it, it's the good life, it's success, and that's who I. So now I use food for a sense of personal success. And so that's psycho-eating. Well, we can do that. We can do psychosexing. We can do psycho security. We can overload it. So this would be the part of the thing. Then there are people, and I would consider Maslow or Frankl one of them, who, if we could look at the third side of this, and we call that the mastery face of the pyramid of needs, so that now I give it such rich meaning, so robust meanings, that as I move up through the process, I have such ability to give it such meanings that my ability to gratify that need, that drive, is masterful. Now, I could fast, I could not eat, and it would mean something spiritual. I could fast maybe in protest for some injustice in society. I could fast for reflection or meditation. So I can so rise above my needs, my drives are not dominating. And so this is what happens when we really master these things, because our meanings can give it such meanings that I don't need safety and security. So a Mother Teresa can live in the most dangerous part of Calcutta and have nearly nothing, but she has so mastered her drives, the drives don't drive her to secure herself, to get enough food, sociality. She has risen above all of that, and at the self-actualization level, she is actualizing something so much bigger. Justice and care and compassion and living at a level that now she has mastered even the drives. And so Frankl could live in a camp and surviving on 8 ounces of soup, as he describes in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He could live on 8 ounces and have fun with the sick humor he described that was in the camp and the collegial relationships he was creating as he was imagining after the camp, lecturing back in his hometown and telling people about the importance of meaning. So we got the naive experience of our drives, we got the coping or not coping experience with our drives, and then the ability to master our drives, so that we can live at such a level we don't even need the gratification like we used to when we were just living at this level. And there's something about that for most of us attracts us, as that's kind of living at a much higher human level. And so once again, the paradox is, if we accept our drives, they're just drives. And if you get in a situation to where you can't gratify the drive, for the most part, we can reframe it. We have so much flexibility here that even the drive for survival, if that drive was absolutely dominating and absolute, we couldn't commit suicide. If that drive was absolute, people couldn't have such eating disorders as anorexia or bulimia and see eating as something bad. I mean, we've got so much flexibility. Our meanings have so much flexibility. We can see these drives. We can frame them. Think about the sadist or the masochist, who at the survival thing of pain and pleasure, that hurts. But they can now say, but it really hurt, do it again. Because they can bring pleasure to pain and enjoy the pleasure of the pain. Or the reverse is having pleasure giving pain. I mean, this is how far we can push our drives, that our drives are not absolute. And when you take charge of your meaning making, we can give them lots of meanings, some that they can bear, some that they cannot bear.
I think with the anorexics I've worked with, they see starving as good.
Yeah.
They don't interpret eating as bad as much as starving is good.
Yeah.
And they're going towards something rather than away from food. They're going towards something else.
Yeah.
And
So, I think the meanings, and for them, that's a coping skill.
Yeah.
And for us, it's a problem. But,
Yeah.
for them, it's a coping skill. So they do reframe it in that way. Someone, number two, is that, I see people who are let's say, seeking love. And when that gets frustrated, they immediately then drop down. Everything, it's like a house of cards. It has a domino effect of things collapse. They feel insecure, and then they feel, their basic needs. They stop eating, and they do things like a house of cards. And, I'm wondering if there's a, something inherent in this model that can stop that domino effect or that collapse that takes place when people start going in the wrong direction.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So my first response would be, if someone is going in the wrong direction, if they're coping and trying to cope, but the coping doesn't work, it creates problems, creates difficulties, then some meaning, some frame is the culprit. Somehow how they're thinking about surviving, food and water, sex, safety, and security, somehow that frame itself has distorted the drive. So the solution is, one solution is the drive is a drive. And this is where, as we just embrace and recognize, it's just it's a human drive. And then look for, how can I effectively and in an enhancing way see the drive and welcome and embrace the drive. And then the drive, as it's gratified, vanishes away. We move up higher to where we go into the being needs, our need for beauty, for order, for structure, for contribution, for just all those things, and then we move up. So reframing the meaning, finding the distorted meaning, reframing it, finding a way to gratify it, developing the skill level, and then to that extent, it'll be released itself. So the drives that you have, and that's what this page here is about, looking at these drives and the lower drives, and these are our engines for being alive. At this level, the lower level, the engine is a deficiency engine. It's an impulse engine. It moves us when we give it a gratification. So one of the first questions I would have for each of us is, are you okay with need gratification of these drives? Or have you somehow made them wrong? And so as we do that, there's a description of the needs on the next page with the higher and the lower needs and the differences between them. And so I won't go into all of that, just extra things about those drives. So if we're going to take our needs into the crucible we go with our needs. You may want to pick a need that somehow you need to be unleashed from and have a better coping, mastering skill with that. And then once you're unleashed from that, what do you want to be unleashed to? So the needs are the basic requirements of the mind-body system for life and well-being. And so as you take it into the crucible, identify a need or a drive that you struggle with. Sexuality, aggression, competition, cooperation, tenderness, fallibility, vulnerability, mortality, and that's just the beginning of the list. As you notice these words refer to concepts about these impulses that's within us. So embracing our aggression when we feel threatened, our sexuality. So sex can be at any one of these levels, because you could psychosex. You could use sex not for connecting and being intimate with another person, propagating and the species, but you could use it to feel safe. You know, anybody have you ever used sex in order to feel safe and secure? Well, to that level, you're using it for something it really wasn't designed for. Have you ever used sex for sociality? You know, what do we do tonight? And it only becomes a problem when you have no other way of what you're going to do tonight. or for a sense of self. I'm a real man only when I'm getting some. Or I know I'm only a female when my sexuality has been recognized, and etc. So we can give it such meaning that we do psychosexing. And the problem is that then the highest levels of using sex for really connecting and being intimate, that it doesn't prove, people who use that to prove something. And so the meanings we give to these different needs, and just recognizing the need, acknowledging it, and becoming okay with it. So you can see, enter the crucible, and then what we're doing is just applying the crucible, acceptance, witnessing, appreciating, honoring the need. Now my guess is one of the challenges here, honoring the need of aggression, appreciating aggression, because a lot of us have been taught to fear anger or aggression or firmness or taking a stand or protecting ourselves. And yet it's just a basic survival need. And if we embrace it and honor it and recognize it, then we don't have to become afraid of it. In fact, we can really utilize it in a very healthy way. So honoring any of these needs. Vulnerability, a lot of times I hear and interact with people about vulnerability. They're afraid of being open and vulnerable. So here's a need. It's actually a drive for us to be open and vulnerable, to disclose ourselves. It really speaks to the deepest part of ourselves, to be known, to be recognized, to be loved. Because how can you love someone if you don't know their vulnerabilities? And yet, most of us have a real struggle with that. And so you're holding a space so that you can honor your vulnerability. And openness, and so we go in there, and as you relax into this crucible of transformation, what truth do you need to speak to your need? Now the truth may be it's just a human need. It's just part of the wiring of what we need to be fully alive, fully human. That may be the truth you need to speak to it. The truth may be mom and dad, religious culture, some other culture, school culture, has not told me quite the truth about the need. There's nothing inherently bad about sex or aggression or vulnerability. And so the truth may be it's okay to feel these impulses so that you can embrace that. Quality control, the need and use for it, and check for cognitive distortions. Let the transformation occur. So as we take it into it, we're going to use acceptance and witnessing and appreciating, and then just speaking the truth to it so that we're released from it. So this is a crucible of transformation. What would you like to transform? Any fears, any angers that are unrealistic, any vulnerabilities, any other feelings along that line. So that's what we're going to take into the crucible. So you might take a need. You might take an emotion. So that's the next page, an emotion. If an emotion is just this emotional energy to move out, then what we're going to do is essentially use the crucible to metastate the emotion with acceptance and just witnessing the emotion, and then appreciating what we have of value in that emotion, and then speaking whatever truth. Yesterday I read 5 truths about emotions. They're just emotions. They're relative to the maps that create them. They're not absolute, and they don't tell you what to do. You always have choice about how to act in response to the emotion. So those 5 truths about emotions that we covered yesterday might be the truth to speak to the emotion. I've written in several of the books in several places of an experience I had with a young man years ago. He came in, I had a therapy practice at the time, and he came in, he said his mother and his father were both alcoholics, and so he had labeled himself a child of an alcoholic. And so he had all the symptoms. And so we were working, and he had a great need for approval, and he mostly spent his attention life outside and never noticing what he wanted or thought or felt. And so one day, one session, he had met some girl and he wanted to ask her out, and so we spent some time. And so because he didn't have very good social skills, and so during the week he had asked her to go out for coffee with him, and so so he went out. The next week he came back in and he was really depressed because it didn't go the way he wanted to, and she had she didn't like some facets of him, and so he felt really rejected. And so we talked and we talked around some things, and finally as he was leaving I said, well, I hope you have a better week. At least you're not your emotions, so you can take that with you. And it was just an offhanded comment. And he said, what? And I hadn't even paid attention to what I said, and he said, what? And I said, well, at least you're not your emotions. And he said, what does that mean? And I said, well, you're more than your emotions. And that was the first time I said, well, maybe not you. Maybe you are just a hunk of emotions. So he came back the next week, and he walked in the office, and he had different posture, he had different face, he was just beaming, and he said, this has been the greatest week of my life. He said, I never knew I was not my emotions. I thought if I felt a failure, I am a failure. If I felt rejected, I am a reject. If I felt lonely, I am a lonely guy. And he had, and so just a little frame, I'm not my emotions. So taking our emotions into the crucible so that we can metastate them with acceptance and appreciation and use the emotion. So there's several things there about emotion. So is there an emotion you want to take into the crucible? An emotion you have not been comfortable with? Vulnerability, fear, apprehensive, worry, sexuality, sensuality, excitement. There are some people who are scared of their excitements. Maybe they've had some experiences where they got their hopes up and they got excited and they wanted, and then they had a disappointment, and that happened again, and now they're afraid of getting their hopes up. Maybe they're ashamed of getting their hopes up because maybe they've lied to themselves by saying, well, it's for other people, it's not for me. And so is there any emotion you want to take into the crucible? The next section there is into the crucible we go with our strengths. So I just put in on this page the SWOT analysis, the strengths and weaknesses. And so into the crucible we go with our strengths and our weaknesses. Maybe it's some of your powers to bring into the crucible, because you've got mental powers and emotional powers and verbal powers and relational powers and behavioral power. You've got lots of powers. Do you own them fully? And recognize, I'm a powerful person. If you said those words inside yourself, I'm a powerful person. Does that settle well? Or do you feel guilty for being a powerful person? Because there are some cultural frames that can take that away. So taking your strengths and playing to your strengths and owning your strengths and being willing to stand up and say, I'm good at this. I'm good at this and this, but I'm good at this, and I'm going to cultivate it and use it and master it. And so this is the difference between assertiveness and arrogance. If you assert that you are good at something and you've got evidence, and it does seem to be a skill that you can develop, and you get the witnesses of others that you're good at that, then that's not pride or arrogance. You're just speaking the truth. C.S. Lewis, many years ago, I read something somewhere. He said, humility is not a beautiful woman pretending she's ugly. Humility is not an intelligent man pretending he's dumb. Humility is acknowledging what is. So the ability to take our strengths and play to them. Same thing. You may want to take into the crucible your weaknesses. Can you state your weakness? A lot of us guys in this culture, the prohibition is don't acknowledge your weakness. Don't say it out loud, because it's not manly to be weak. So one of the things I want to take into to the crucible is the things I'm not strong at, my lack of strength. Because if I acknowledge that, self-actualizing is knowing what to play to and acknowledging what I'm not good at. So I might want to bring those into it to accept it, appreciate it, and just say so without making a big deal about it and loading it up semantically so that it's okay not to be good at everything. So strengths and weaknesses, taking that into the crucible. Choices. The ultimate power of choice is what really pulls us into the human domain, and that is ours, if we accept it, appreciate it, and step up to embrace it. So here's five choices, choices that can control your destiny. You can choose what to focus on. You can choose what meaning to give it. You can choose what action that you want to take in response to it. You can choose your attitude, your frame of mind. And you can choose the emotion that you'll experience, the state that you'll connect with that and cultivate by cherishing and nourishing. So here's 5 choices. As you go down through those 5 choices, do you feel fully empowered with these choices? Because one of these things might be what you want to take into the crucible. And so the choice point is that ability to step back and to recognize, here's the choices before me, and I take ownership of these choices, of these decisions, and then as you do that, you'll feel like the executive of your own life. Choice is a part of our mind that's different from just representing or framing, and from emoting. Choice is that executive part of your brain that makes up your mind, and that creates a pathway. And this has really been played down in psychology for years. Otto Rank did focus on will a good bit. But it was really the human potential movement that brought will or choice back into the view that we are choosers. And we can choose what meanings to give and therefore create the drives and the reality we experience. So you might want to take choice in. This will chase out all sense of victimhood and give you a sense that I'm the author and I write the script. I'm the author, I write. And then you have a sense of authority. You have a sense of authoring your life and writing the script that you want to do with regard to your focus, your attitude, your emotions, your behaviors, these 5 areas of choice. And so that'll put you at that choice point and bring out that executive power within you. Okay.
Now, when you take these into the crucible, do you take them in a context, or do you take them in
Okay.
as a whole?
Okay.
Do you do them one at a time? Do you do situation? Do you do...
Okay. So the question is, how do we take these in, and do we do them one at a time or as a whole or in context? So that's the next thing as we take them into crucible. As you access your crucible, someone else helps you to access your crucible so that whatever you bring in, you're going to accept, witness, appreciate, and then speak truth to it. Usually it's good to ground it with a trigger. So we start with something abstract like a need or a drive, an emotion, a choice. And so whatever that is, what triggers that? What sets this off so that you feel this, know this, and whatever the experience is? So we'll ground it with what sets this off. That'll ground it. That'll create the context in which this occurs. Now, it may be everything sets this off. Well, pick one thing that you know that definitely sets it off, and we can work with that one thing and then later generalize. So setting it off will ground it so it's not floating without some kind of grounding. So what sets it off? The next question is going to be, how do you know? How do you know this is a problem, this interferes, this gets in the way, this leashes you, this locks you down, this prevents you from unleashing your... So how do you know? so what that'll do is for us to start witnessing, and this is where the crucible becomes really important. How do you know is inviting us to go into that problem state. But we're going into the problem state inside the crucible. So whatever we're talking about, not about me as a human being, it's about this behavior, this experience, this feeling, this whatever, so that now the problem is contained inside of a space, and however emotional, however strong, whatever hot thoughts, hot feelings, boiling stuff arises, it's in this context. And so once you initiate it that way, how do you know? This is where the person who is asking that question, how do you know that this is a problem? How do you know this is leashing you? How do you know that you've got some meaning about this? Then holding that space and maybe even supporting and saying, so if I'm the support person, I might say, since this is not about you as a human being, but just what you experience at that time, that place, as you witness that, what else is there? What else is there? What else is there? Okay, so what's there, and what are the meanings that you're bringing to this that makes this so? And then I'll climb that meaning ladder with them. And let's say that's so. What does that mean? Let's say that's so. What do you believe about that? Let's say that's so. What do you value or disvalue about that? And I'll just climb that meaning ladder with them inside the crucible, holding the space. As you witness that, what is there to appreciate? What is there of value? What is there of significance? What is there that you could give some real rich meaning to? I might want to ask about cognitive distortions. What meanings and maps have you used that has distorted this, exaggerated it, created psycho eating, sexing, working, whatever? Where have you overloaded it so now it has semantic reactions in you? So as I hold the space, I'm just an explorer, just exploring what's going on, how's it going on? Because whatever we're exploring, myself and the other, it's not about them. And they can feel safe, and somebody, it takes nothing away from their dignity. And then we'll say, so what's the truth? What's the reality you need to speak? And as we let them speak that, as we're holding this space, and this is where if I give them permission to be flooded with their emotions, if they give themselves permission to be flooded with their emotions, because it's just emotions and drives, just raging thoughts and feelings. As we do that, then we can ask, usually it'll happen, but you can ask, how is this transforming? How would you like it to transform? So this becomes something that you can put to good use, that'll take your skills, your potentials, that'll unleash some new possibilities. You might ask that question, what is being unleashed right now? What do you have a sense could be unleashed by this? So the tool is the crucible, the space that we're holding. Doing this with someone else will be much easier than doing it with yourself. But do it with someone else for a while, and you'll be able to now transfer it back and apply it to self. And that'll be the highest use of this, your ability to use this tool. So into the crucible, we're going to bring something. So let me do a demonstration, then we'll debrief that, and then we'll turn everybody loose with this. So as we get started this afternoon, we want to pull up your crucible. So do you have that well established?
Yes.
Okay. So to facilitate that, as you think about your space where you feel safe and that sense of just unconditional positive regard for you and your sense of dignity and value, a place of safety, a place of reflection, a place where you can now just witness what is, accepting it, welcoming it into your world, maybe not with a lot of desire, but welcoming it to witness. And your ability, your delightful, precious ability to appreciate. And however it is that you look at something with the eyes of appreciation, looking for value, And with that strength of your ego to just accept whatever is and look it in the face and explore it and to say the truth of whatever is. So given that, into this crucible we want to bring, what shall we bring to explore and just find out what's working? Motivation. Okay, so there's a drive. A motivation, a drive to do?
To support myself.
To support yourself.
Yes.
Okay, so as you welcome that in, so we can just notice it, and where does your mind go when you think about supporting myself?
I think that's probably where some of the confusion comes in, because normally I think of a 9-to-5 job, yet everything I've done so far just about has been I'm an entrepreneur and have my own business.
Okay.
So I think the confusion comes in, maybe that's where the conflict is.
Okay, so what's the conflict?
I should have a job.
I should have a job. All right. So we start with shoulding.
Yes.
Are you pretty good at that?
Let me say I do have a job. I should have a meaningful job.
Ah, all right. Why should you? Why should you? What's the rule? What's the rule that says you should have a meaningful job?
It came from somewhere way down in there. I don't know where. It's an old one.
Okay. If you don't have a meaningful job, it means
I'm a bum.
I'm a bum.
Yeah.
Let's say you are. We're just witnessing this now. Just peering over. What if what if it means that you're a bum? Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
I'm a pretty happy bum.
So there's a facet of okay. But let's say that's so. What would that mean if that was true?
In the real sense of it, I would be lazy, irresponsible, and a social outcast.
So lazy, irresponsible, and social outcast. Boy, this is
Right.
loaded.
Yeah.
This is loaded. So no wonder you're getting away from it, because it means you're lazy, you're irresponsible,
Right.
and a social outcast.
Right.
All those three things at the same time. If you're a bum because you don't have a meaningful job.
Right.
So let's say you're lazy, you're irresponsible. If you were, and a social, what would that mean? So what? Why move away from that?
I would feel like people look down at me. I would feel ashamed.
Ashamed.
Yes.
So people looking down and feeling ashamed. So that's what would come out of that. And
Right.
and so it means disrespect in their eyes. It means
Not accepted.
not accepted.
Being shunned.
Okay, so that's why that behavior would occur out there in the world. They would look down, they would shun you, because it would mean that you're not as good as them, and
Right.
so disrespected.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
let's say that happens. Let's say they disrespect you and those behaviors. What would that mean?
There's a real conflict there, because okay, I got it. I would be that type of person, the lazy, irresponsible, whatever. However, it just dawned on me in looking for that I'm not a label.
Okay,
That it may be a temporary coping thing or a temporary job or whatever, but I don't have to own those things.
okay. So it sounds like you are finding some truths about you.
Right.
So what's the truth you're saying now that helps to adjust all of this?
That right here and now, I'm doing the best that I can to get along or to cope
Okay.
and
Okay.
to support myself.
Okay. So as you say those words, what are you aware of?
Relief.
Okay. It means
It means I don't have to accept those labels. I'm not them. I'm not
Okay.
those descriptive words.
Okay. So what are you now appreciating about you?
I am hardworking. What I do is not a, a real, what you would call important job, but I work very hard.
Okay.
It's a very difficult job.
Okay. So it sounds like you're really honoring that facet of you, that I do work hard. What else are you could you honor in this process?
That I'm doing it, period.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So what is being unleashed?
Before I have felt this sense of heaviness, of this weight, of this almost as if I have to stay within those parameters. So what is being unleashed is really kind of the possibilities. I don't have to stay oppressed like
Okay.
that.
So if you don't have to stay oppressed, then, and that's, you're being unleashed from that oppression, then what are you being unleashed to?
Energy, vitality, possibilities, options.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't like a bubble popped, it was more like it kind of, it was like a mushroom cloud.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So hearing yourself say this and feel the mushroom cloud and what are you realizing?
I feel a lot lighter, and I feel a lot less tension. I used to feel like I had rubber bands around my chest all the time with anxiety and worry, and those just kind of went away.
Okay.
They just dissolved.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the crucible here, we
Yeah.
started with it, we went to see where it is, and where's that lack of motivation now? What has it been transformed into?
I think there was a release of energy and vitality and drive for me to do whatever I want to do. It doesn't matter. There's no label so far as what I do.
Okay.
Just do it.
Okay. So how will this change? How will you be different in the days and the weeks to come as you move out on your timeline into the things you do?
Well, I think I was, a lot of my energy was being drained because I was condescending about what I did. So it was an awful lot of work, but I was making it worse by putting more weight on myself with the condescending labels, telling myself I can do better, or I should do better.
Okay. So what will be your self-talk now as you move out?
I'm doing it, and if I choose to do something else, I can and I will.
Okay. And how does that make you feel?
Free.
Okay.
Much lighter, I'm able to breathe deep. And before, my breathing was shallow. And a lot more energy. A lot more energy, a lot more focus, a lot more acceptance of myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe you'd be way too dangerous turning you loose in the world like this. Maybe we should just put you back where you were. Thank you.